All right, so today we're working on another Codewars challenge here called word values. And this is a 7 KYU level difficulty, but there's actually a lot going on in this one. So we'll take our time and work through it and try to really understand everything that goes into this. So here's our prompt, given a string, and assuming that each letter in the string has a value equal to its position in the alphabet, our string will have a value of 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6. So meaning that if each letter is assigned to a number correlating to its position in the alphabet, we're going to add up all of those values together to get the value of the entire string. So we're going to be given a list of strings, and the task will be to return the values of the strings as explained above by multiplied by the position of that string in the list. For our purpose, position begins with 1. Okay, so that's important to note right there. Unlike most arrays being 0 index, we are going to consider the position beginning with 1 as we go through our input. So name value ABC, ABC, ABC should return 6 and 24. This first string right here has a value of 6. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3. You add those up, you get that value of 6. And then what we need to return is 6 times 1 because it's in the first position in the input array. This one right here has a value of 12 when you add up all those letters, and then 12 times 2 because it's in the second position. So this example right here should return 6 and 24. Also note that spaces are ignored, so we will have to account for that when we do our coding. This just explains what I talked through. Okay, the input will only contain lowercase characters and spaces. Important to note that we don't need to worry or consider uppercase or other types of characters. So let's start by figuring out how we're going to find the value of each letter in each string before we get too into the weeds of going through everything in the array. So one way that we can do that is by using the built-in function of finding the character code for each letter or character in JavaScript. And what that's going to give us is the ASCII value or character code. So for example, if I just do a string of the character A and find its character code right here, and let's console log this so we can see what's happening here. I believe that should return 97. Yeah, 97 is the ASCII value for lowercase a. So what we can do to make this correspond with its position in the alphabet is simply subtract, not subtract 1, subtract 96. And if we take a look at that now, we see that that's going to return 1 for A. If I change that up, let's make it D. That should return 4. Yeah, and there we go. We see we're getting 4 over here, okay? So using this syntax will help us find the value of each letter as we work our way through. So what I would actually like to do with this is we're going to cut that out of there. I'm going to make a little helper function here called char_val or character value. We're going to pass a character into it. And basically what that's going to do is return what we were just looking at, that value based on its position in the alphabet. Now there was one other thing we need to take a look at over here. What was that spaces should be ignored. So we do want to account for that because otherwise we would get an ASCII value for the space, which if you subtract 96 from would give us a fairly negative value. So if the character ends up being a space, we simply want to return 0 because we don't want that to add to the value of the string. All right, now what we have to understand here, we're being passed an array, and in some way, shape, or form, this is going to involve doing some sort of nested loop, because we need to loop through each index in the array, and then we need to look at each individual letter to sum up all those values. What we could do is use map to go through and basically replace each one of those values, but I think that's going to be a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to start with just a very simple for loop to go through the array. I less than a dot length, I plus plus. And then in here, what we want to do is declare a sum variable. So for each one of these strings, as we look at each individual letter, we're going to use this helper function to find its value and then add that to the sum. So now I need to loop through the individual letters. So we're going to do another for loop, and we'll make this a for of loop. For let the character of, and this is going to be array at the index of I. And that will give us each letter. Inside this for of loop, we're going to use our helper function. We're going to find the character value and pass in our character. And we're going to add that character value to the sum, like this. And I think that should do what we need it to do in terms of finding the value for each character, creating the sum. Now the next step here, we want to still be inside this for loop, but outside of this for of loop. So we're going to be right in here. We need to multiply the sum times, and it's going to be I plus 1, because I starts at 0 right here, but we are considering this to be like a 1 indexed array instead of 0 indexed. So this will give us, or should give us, the right value. Now what we need to do is be able to store that in an array. So I'm going to make a result array up here, take all of this and wrap this in parentheses, and we're going to say result dot push. And before we attempt to see if we've solved everything correctly, let's just console log the result and see if we're getting what we expect to see here. Yeah, here's the first one. Should return 88, 12, 225, and that's what we're getting. So that's encouraging. Instead of console logging, let's try a return. And let's see if this is going to work. Looks like we're good so far on the initial test. And there we go, that passes all of the tests. So hopefully that makes sense. There's a decent amount going on in this one. It's also nice to be able to show how to use a small little helper function to clean up the main function and not include so much code in this inner nested loop here.